in the fight or flight mode. They either want to fight or they want to run. And I think the only way that that is sort of mediated is if we're talking. Because I think we're in crisis, or many of our young people are in crisis in Homewood. And the police are now in crisis because they're being shot at or being singled out when they come in to serve. So I think the only way, and when Jerome started talking to me about this process, I said the only way that you can begin to even deal with the kind of feelings you're feeling, Ms. German, or the things that you saw, Ms. Wheaton, are if people are actually sitting at the table and beginning to talk. Because if you first express how you feel, and people are respectful, as Commander Brackett said, of how people feel, and just take it as is. Don't try to dissuade them from what they feel, because you can't help how you feel. You feel the way you feel. You saw what you saw, and from your perspective, it is valid. It is what it is. And people acknowledge that, and then they say, okay, now that we have a clear understanding of what we feel and think, what do we do here? What do we do as a group of 5 or 6 people, 5 on one side, 5 on the other, 3 on one side, 3 on the other? What do we do to begin to at least have the conversation where we can understand how to move forward? Because right now, we're at an impasse. We're not moving forward. And just last week, one of the students at Westinghouse was shot in the hand running on Frankstown. Nobody saw anything, though, by the way. It was at 3:30 in the afternoon. Really? Nobody saw anything? On Frankstown, and nobody saw anything. That's crazy.
Well, this is the point I wanted to make about that. I think that there's still the cliche that black on black crimes, no one cares about. If it's that way, that's been a cliche since I was a little girl. And also, I know that the New Day has so many informants now. There's so many people who went to jail that didn't know what they were getting to, that they have to be informants. So I know that the police get a lot of information. But as a police officer, because if you want to know how someone's feeling, place yourself, if I was a police officer in Homewood today, if I don't see the community being responsible and taking part in the children and what's going on, I wouldn't really want to just risk my life in this type of environment unless the community and the parents and people would be responsible. Like Jerome said, we have to really take an issue with our children, our families, what our priority should be, our kids, in getting to the bottom of these guns and killings, and then ask the officers to come in. But if after that Jordan Miles, it's really kind of hard to just serve a young black man on a platter to the police officers with the kind of experiences that we've seen.
Oh, I don't.
So the way she's talking, she would really could lead this because her attitude is so positive and not one-sided.
But I don't disagree with anything you said. I just think
so it's
that
real.
I don't disagree with anything you said, but I think that's a part of expressing how you feel. Because part of it is that one of our children was violated. Jordan Miles was violated. Period. End of discussion. And so, as a community, we felt violated because one of our children were violated.
A lot of our children.
Right. But again, a lot of our children are violated daily. But I'm just saying that was in our face because it was all over the paper, and you could look at how this young man was.
Yeah, and officers didn't get charged with it.
Well, I think that's the conversation.
Equity.
Right. And it's
but
bad.
it's also, but I think, but it's also, so I've done a lot of work with the city officers and training and things like that, and so what I realized was that the police department is like any other business, organization, or corporation. You got bad ones and you got good ones. And what we tend to do is we tend to paint this brush, right? My experience with police officers has been, and they're all like that. And what I always tell young people is that I never knew Officer Friendly. So when Officer Friendly would come to our school when I was a kid,
no,
he did not exist and he did not exist in my neighborhood. So when I was a kid, I would always say, well, Officer Friendly was at our school. But when I went back to the neighborhood, the officers that worked and patrolled my neighborhood were not like Officer Friendly, right?
That's why I heard
a friendly to what you just said, because similarly, the officers are painting a whole community as
right. That was going to be my exactly.
And I have never, when I tell you, never experienced a bad relationship in Homewood, and I've only been here for 4 years.
Oh, that's probably why.
I've never experienced a negative thing in this space, and so I think we need to figure out how we can get folk to really deal with the positive of both communities as well.
Well, I like what Michelle said about, she said training her younger officers and having, the way she trains and wants to train them. So by her opening up discussions with her leading with that, that's
We
kind of
do a
good.
lot on the north side. I mean, Jerome lives in the district that I serve, and I actually left this district, sorry. I was transferred 5 years ago. This was my community that I literally love serving for years, and thank you, Ms. Lee. But part of, again, as we're starting to think about next steps, because as we're talking now and thinking, okay, these are nice to get some of this out and where we're aired and things like that. So the next steps needs to be a very formalized process. I know I'm going to be tasked with working with Jerome and Operation Better Block and how we move these conversations forward. I also have been very clearly been given permission by the U.S. Attorney Hickton to do these things in this community as well as in other communities. But the thing that really strikes me is Homewood is at a tipping point, and it has an opportunity to really change itself. But it has to do it in a way that's sustainable. We can't be angry for a minute, because that's what we are in our communities. We have these short, angry fuses about whatever the incident is, and then we are pretty much done. Interestingly enough, Jordan Miles has continued that sort of passion, but it hasn't translated to any action.
Bingo.
When people talk about it, they are upset and they are angry on both sides. You know, I mean,
Oh, really?
Both sides.
On both sides?
yeah,
The
on both
police are
sides.
angry about them trying to kill a child in high school.
Can you just hear me? Let me say why we say, again, it's perspective. Because just, you quickly said, the police are angry because they tried to kill a child. And I'm saying, wait a minute, you just painted me as the police. So everyone who gets angry about Jordan Miles, they get angry at me too. So yeah, there are people who will say, you know what, I'm a good officer, I'm grinding it out, I'm out here every day willing to risk my life for a stranger. Most of us won't risk our lives for our own family members. But they're saying, I'm doing this for a stranger, and then how you respond back to me is, oh, you all beat Jordan Miles. Well, no, let me tell you, I testified against those officers in the Jordan Miles case. I stood out there against, not whether it was an officer, not whether it was, but what did that incident look like? Let's evaluate the incident without emotion. And so when both sides are upset, and if both sides have a right to be angry, I don't know about the 3 individual officers, that's not what I'm talking about. But there's another 859 officers that didn't hit Jordan Miles, that didn't, condone. And there was a lot of clashing internally that you all want to know about this case. And people just saying, this is a problem. Because it is symptomatic of a lot of other things that are going on. The only other anger I've seen that has lasted this long is Rodney King and Johnny Gamage, God rest, Rodney's soul, right now. But, so if we're going to be passionate and angry, then we need to move it in a forward and a very positive action and just not be angry about it.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I like that phrase you put on the poster. What did you say again? You said action. What was the sentence you
We're
said?
very passionate.
Passionate
No,
to
she had
action.
it. Yeah,
I
okay.
think one of the issues too, I think, is the cultural difference. I think of most political police officers in the community. I think, do we have officers from Homewood or from government and Middle East? I think if we don't have that, I think I've noticed since not being from here, that Pittsburgh is segregated, and within those segregated communities have different sort of cultural differences and cultural different perspectives on how we see things. And I think if we could have more officers from who understand, what goes on in our communities, I think that would help.
Yeah, and I mean, you're always